Thanks for having me. As I like frantically look for the Zoom share screen button, if anybody is looking for an open source idea, I'm going to drop this one on you to create a game that rotates through all the different communication interfaces, and whoever gets the share screen button first, like they win that round. So you can like do it with Zoom and Google Hangouts and WebEx and all sorts of stuff. So that's a free one on you if you're looking for some fun project to work on. But today I'm going to be talking about, as Todd mentioned, the 10 Commandments of Community Organizing. I may have paid him to say all those nice things about me. But as he mentioned, I'm the Director of Angular Development at Bitovi. I'm a nonprofit founder. I'm an international speaker, and courtesy of the pandemic, I've become a pretty crazy plant lady. And that's a lot of different hats to wear. And I feel like a lot of open source maintainers or community organizers have definitely felt the pain I've felt if they've ever been questioned about their project and heard, oh, this isn't your full-time job? Like, poof, mind's blown, right? And so kind of the theme of this talk is creating some rules or some guidelines, or honestly, just like a safety harness for anybody setting out to run a community, do something in the open source world, some kind of like rules or commandments that I've learned over the years that I want to impart on y'all today. This is a super condensed talk, so I'm just going to give you the high outline. If you're interested or you're like, oh my gosh, this is so me, Jennifer, like this is exactly the kind of thing I deal with on a daily basis. I'm going to be doing a longer version of this talk where I not only share some more in-depth strategies, but I share some horror stories. So you will know you are not the only one who's had these kind of experiences running a community. All right, so a little bit about my background in the community space. I, like so many minorities in tech, kind of got into the industry, was really, really excited, looked around the room and was like, wait, nobody looks like me here. And so that led me to found, I think about 8 years ago now, Kansas City Women in Technology, a nonprofit with the goal of getting more women into the tech community in Kansas City. And things never turn out the way you expect. I learned a lot of lessons along the way. And as I began to hear the needs of the community and everything like that, it led to the launching of a lot of different programs. One of the first initiatives we took on was launching a local chapter of Coder Dojo. Coder Dojo is actually a global nonprofit that has made it really easy to bootstrap and start up a coding club to teach kids how to code. So we recruited mentors in from all over the city. It just exploded in popularity to the point that we would actually, have trouble or have to wait list. It got that popular. And then a lot of our programs led from there. We started Coding in Cupcakes, which is specifically targeting girls, getting them engaged and excited in coding. And then when that, of course, exploded in popularity, we would get a lot of emails from women being like, hey, I don't have a daughter, but can I come to your coding classes anyway? And so that led to the birth of Coding in Cocktails, which is one of our more popular series for teaching women how to code. And then, of course, as much as we could, we took every opportunity to partner with already existing organizations. You may have heard of Django Girls or, Pie Ladies or View Vixens or all sorts of these different organizations. So we did our best to kind of partner with them and be able to bootstrap what they've done and bring those things to our community. So that's a little bit of my background and where some of these commandments came from. So when we talk about why communities matter, like all the talks we've seen so far are so brilliant and have so struck into my heart of, valuing people and valuing this volunteer work that we do. And communities matter and do so much good for us. They are really our best workforce development right now. Universities can't keep up, boot camps can't keep up with the way that we're progressing as a software industry. So this is one of the best ways that we have to educate and build our workforce. And these are largely run by volunteers, by communities. These give us opportunities to network. This has been monumental, especially for underrepresented minorities, to get a better understanding of how the tech community works, talking about pay, talking about equal salary, that kind of thing. This is a way to get growth opportunities, to find what's out there beyond your company or your little isolated box that you're working in. And honestly, this gets psychological. This helps us tap into Maslow's hierarchy, that love and belonging or self-actualization that we need to feel good as human beings. By joining communities, by being able to be around people who understand what we do and share our interests and our passions and our failures and our triumphs, that's very fulfilling for us as human beings on, a psychological level. And the fact of this is community organizers are unsung heroes. I'm assuming a lot of y'all at this conference have your hands into something, whether you're a part of a community, whether you're leading a community. And a lot of people just have no idea how much work goes into what we do to create these amazing events, to create amazing conferences, to create amazing open source projects. So this content is for y'all. I want to help you learn from some of the mistakes I've made over the years and have a guideline from walking forward. So why 10 commandments? I was raised Catholic. So if you're not of the Catholic or Christian religion, basically these were rules given to a biblical figure by their God to say, hey, this is how your people should live. And I remember one time in a Slack conversation, I was talking to another community organizer who had just had some disaster happen. And I said something along the lines of, thou shalt confirm thy venue thrice. And so it kind of became this running joke. And I'm like, damn, like this would make a really good talk idea to kind of give people guidelines of things that they can do to capture some of the learnings we've all made as community organizers and help run better events and build better communities. All right, so right into our 10 commandments, thou shalt practice self-care. And this is commandment number 1. This is the most important one because you as a volunteer, this probably is not your full-time job, right? So your time is your biggest asset. Your priority needs to be guarding your time and using your time in the most effective way possible to push your project forward. So key here is to definitely avoid burnout. You want to implement task management strategies in office hours. And again, if you join me a little later on, I'll kind of share some of my tips and tricks for managing these kind of things. But a big thing is learning to field criticism. You know, you may not be operating at full capacity because you're wearing so many different hats, but the people criticizing you don't have context into your world or your project. So learning to field that criticism and be able to extract the pieces of information you can execute on versus when somebody's just there to complain is one of the best things you can do to kind of manage self-care, protect yourself, and continue to be a better organizer. Along those lines, I would advocate for you to build your support system, find other people running communities, find other people who share your struggles to be able to get their ideas and bounce things off them, and learn to delegate. One of the trickiest things in anything, be it open source software, be it in a company, be it in a community, is learning how to scale, and delegation is a key part of that. I want to drop one little note on you. This is what I call Jennifer's first law. Anybody who's been involved with my nonprofit, who's been on my leadership team, is familiar with this. And that is a person's incompetence in email is directly proportional to the likelihood that they will massively waste your time. When you start leading a community, you start leading a project, you are the face of it, you become this focal point, this lightning rod for literally everything. And so sometimes it takes a little while to adjust and to be able to discern what's valid content and what's just going to be a complete and utter waste of your time. So I'd encourage you to prioritize your time and be really smart and work smarter, not harder. All right, commandment number 2, thou shalt become an expert communicator. And this is really key. This has been touched on a lot already, and the importance of documentation in open source projects. But the key here is never assume people are as in tune to your organization as you are. Your project is your baby. It's your life, right? And so you have this very narrow tunnel vision, and not everybody has insight into what you're thinking about. So this means what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to be aware of that and adapt your communication to your audience. Is Slack an appropriate format for conveying information? Is it email? Is it updating the README page, or building out a wiki inside of GitHub? Just be aware of that and make sure that you're adapting your communication style to benefit your audience. And when in doubt, over communicate. If you're running something, you're managing something, you've got that 20,000 foot view where you understand everything that's going on. And people may not have that view or those pieces. So the more you can communicate, explain the why, explain the roadmap, explain how things are happening, the more successful you're going to be. All right, number 3, thou shalt manage expectations. And this is really great life advice, period, but it'll prevent you a lot of heartache in open source projects or in community management. So managing expectations equals happier community and fewer complaints. In the open source community, if you're seeing a lot of repeat issues or something like that, if you can manage expectations around your team's capacity and your ability to address those issues, that is really key. People will have a better understanding of how you're able to operate, and then you're not going to have to filter through as much noise all the time. It's also really important to set boundaries. As I mentioned before, some of you might have gotten that question of, oh, this isn't your full-time job. So you're going to need to get comfortable politely reminding people, politely setting those boundaries of, hey, this is what I am actually capable of right now. And in those lines of managing expectations, know your value system. I'm going to tell you straight up that there are organizations that my nonprofit has partnered with before. And when we didn't feel like they were emulating our values as intersectional feminists or being aware of problems that non-white women face inside of like an already underrepresented community, we walked away from those organizations. And that was a part of our value system. And it's something to manage expectations and maintain. These are our values. This is how we will operate. And along those lines, it's really great to own your code of conduct. And it's not just enough to write a code of conduct or adopt something. A lot of those are open source, but have a process that people know how to report incidents, how incidents are going to be handled. What does that pipeline look like? And so that'll go a long way with helping you manage expectations with how your project will run. All right, number 4, thou shalt not neglect thy volunteers. Volunteers are our community lifeblood. Like, we're unpaid, y'all. We're doing this out of the goodness of our heart because we want to learn, because we understand the importance of building community. And sometimes it's easy as organizers or project facilitators to kind of forget about that. So a couple things to keep in mind with your volunteers: make things easy for volunteers to contribute, whether this is, great documentation or onboarding to how to open a pull request, or whether this is just when and where to show up on time and what tasks and responsibilities are going to be. The more work you can put into streamlining things for volunteers, the greater their output is going to be. Find ways to thank your volunteers. This could be shout outs on social media. This could be like, nice swag or stickers or all sorts of fun things, but make sure that you're prioritizing ways to say thank you. One of the best ways that you can grow is to solicit volunteer feedback and act on it. Not anything may be actionable right away, but one of the key things you can do is get feedback from volunteers on how to improve, because they're going to be looking at projects from a different lens than you are. All right, commandment number 5, thou shalt plan as far in advance as calendarly possible. And I know this is really, really hard, but if you're trying to line up speakers, like, our schedules are crazy, maybe a little less crazy in pandemic times, because, it's just another Zoom. All right, I guess I won't leave my office chair for another 8 hours. But the more planning and the more events you can get on the calendar further out, the more success you're going to have with turnout, with attendees, and with speakers. And seriously, if you ever email a speaker like 24 hours in advance because you need to fill a hole in a panel, and especially if you're trying to fill a token hole in a panel, just don't. There's nothing that's going to enrage us more than doing something like this. So the more forethought you can put into your events and your calendar, the better you will be. Even if you don't have anything lined up, get it on the calendar, start planning towards it, and that'll help you out a lot. All right. Next commandment, the one I referenced earlier, is thou shalt confirm the venue thrice. This kind of goes back a little bit to your tunnel vision. Like, your event is very high priority. You're, planning on it, but the different people you may be working with, be it vendors, be it venues or anything like that, have a million other things on their plate. So one of the best things you can do is, set up a confirmation pattern. When we were consistently running events pre-COVID time, we would confirm the month before, we would confirm the week of, and then we would confirm just 2 days before, because I have walked up and been locked out of a building we were supposed to have a coding and cupcakes class in, and I looked like a jackass. So this is something that I would encourage you to do as an organizer, just to make sure that you're covered, and having a game plan. Along those lines, another commandment we have discovered is thou shalt arrive at least 1 hour before starting time. The kind of golden rule here is your attendees will be early, your speakers will be late. So an hour is a really good buffer time. And even for like a Zoom situation where you're just doing tech checks or anything like that, this hour gives you a really nice buffer, so you're not running around looking like a hot mess for any of the things that could possibly go wrong. Thou shalt test the Wi-Fi and bring any supplies needed. Again, this is a little different in our pandemic era, but it's a good idea to do, tech checks and all sorts of things. But when we're back in person again, having Wi-Fi, if you're having a tech related event, is one of the fastest ways to tech your event. And it's so hard to recover from. Technically, it's social etiquette for speakers to be on top of bringing their dongles, any supplies that they may need. But a good thing you can do as an organizer is to make sure that you have all the supplies, the Wi-Fi, or you have contact information for the person who has Wi-Fi or router access to be able to troubleshoot on the fly if something happens. So all sorts of ways that you can basically be aware of what's going on, kind of make sure that you're covering your ass, and your events will go a lot smoother. One of the other tips that we've adopted over the year is thou shalt have a designated chaos lead, because even with that hour window you're giving yourself to prepare, so many things can go wrong. I will forever be scarred of a story from a Django Girls event. I can't remember. I think they might have been in New York City, where they were using a business over the weekend, some sort of developer shop, and they walk in and the business had told the janitorial staff, well, there's going to be an event over the weekend. So the janitorial staff wasn't planning on coming until after. So they have an event, I don't know, like 50, 60, 80 women. And they walk into the bathrooms and there's no toilet paper. And it's like, you as a technical event organizer, why would the thought ever cross your brain to make sure that your venue has toilet paper? But these are the kind of random things you absolutely cannot plan for. And so having a designated chaos lead, having a person who's not the person in charge is really, really key. Like you see Todd doing a great job emceeing and being prepared and everything like that. He can't both lead this event and be running around solving every crisis. So having a chaos lead is key. If you've never heard of Murphy's Law, that law is what can go wrong will go wrong. And I've been running community events for 8 years now, and this holds true every time. Just the most unexpected disasters you cannot plan for, come up and go wrong. You can be up twerking against a door and your roommate comes home and your pants catch on fire. Like Murphy's Law always prevails. All right. And our final commandment is, thou shalt focus on process improvement wherever possible. Again, this goes back to this idea that this is not our full-time job. This is not something that, we are able to dedicate 100% of our energy to as, community organizers, as open source maintainers. So one of the best things we can do is focus on process improvement wherever we can in small little bits. So whether you notice an onboarding snafu and that's something you can get updated in your documentation or your README, or you notice that check-in is always really stressful when everybody's arriving at the same time, what can you do to optimize those processes? Kind of taking it on like we would take on software development, finding small tasks, like breaking them out into something that's really, really manageable is a great way for your organization to be able to iterate and move quickly. Retrospectives are a great way to handle this and capture information from your volunteers, from other people who are seeing things from different views than you might have. All right. So in summary, as your 10 commandments, thou shalt practice self-care. Commandment number 1, this is your most important. Thou shalt become an expert communicator, understand your audience and figure out what is the best way to convey information to them. And thou shalt manage expectations. Those are your top 3 that are going to get you past the most heartache that you can have as a new organizer, or even more of an experienced organizer. And then thou shalt not neglect thy volunteers. Thou shalt plan as far in advance as calendarly possible. Thou shalt confirm the venue thrice, cover your ass. Thou shalt arrive 1 hour before starting time, test the Wi-Fi, have a designated chaos lead, and focus on process improvement wherever possible. I did want to leave you with some resources. I will link these slides in the chat afterwards, and they're also available on the next slide. But I do have a blog series where I talk about building volunteer teams and how to run great events. One of the things that I did not have a chance to touch on this in depth in this talk is the idea of creating inclusive events and understanding how to account for experiences that may not match your own, that you may not even be aware of. So there's a great article here, 8 areas to work on if you want to create inclusive events, which I hope you all do. And The Missing Stair, which is an article that just talks about the way we have historically dealt with bad actors in our communities and how detrimental they can be. So this is the slide to take a picture of. The slides are available at 10commandments.jenniferwadella.com. If you have any questions, I think I've seen a little bit of noise in the chat and in the Q&A, so feel free to drop anything there. Or if you want to save those, I hope you will join me at 11:45 Eastern time for an extended version of this talk, where I'll go really in depth and give you a lot of tips, tricks, strategies, and some fun horror stories too. So I'm so grateful to have gotten to share this time with you all. This is such a great conference. I love technology, and I love our ecosystem and how important we find community and open source. It makes my heart so happy. So if I do not get a chance to speak with you all later today, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, you wonderful human beings.